And we're back. Our second question, is there any validity to the theory that slavery continues to contribute to our mentality? I'm going to go ahead and start same pattern, start with Deanna.
Wow. It's a very loaded question. But I think that the ideologies of slavery have persisted and are, like, I think in a sense institutionalized within American culture. So, you know, there are clear kind of patterns, or maybe not so clear, but I've seen patterns like the prison industrial complex and how you have new forms of slavery popping up where there are masses of African American men are the main population of prisons, but we don't make up the main population. It's a disproportionate, it's according to our population overall, Black men are disproportionately more in prisons than other races. And I think that's a form or like a form of slavery. I think that they are targeted to keep that labor there, because for an industry to grow and to be profitable, you need a labor market that doesn't cost that much. And so if you keep targeting communities of color who are tending to be there more and more, and, you know, seeing that as disadvantageous communities, then it can contribute to those types of that type of form of modern day slavery. And I think ideologies of slavery still persist. I'm not so sure about the slave mentality because I just haven't personally experienced that yet, but I know that the ideologies of slavery have been passed on, are in our policies, are institutionalized within American culture.
My mentor, Booker T. Washington, the guy I really love. And I like Booker T. Washington for a reason, because Booker T. Washington, he talks about the slaves got to pull himself up by his own bootstraps. But you know, I'm going to say something very controversial here. You can't make a man a slave unless he's inclined to be a slave. And I have to go back to how we became slaves in this country to begin with. We make such perfect slaves. I mean, we of all the people who bring slavery, not only do we make good obedient servants, but we also multiply slavery. We didn't mind being under somebody's foot and making more babies.
And we stuck out pretty good.
Well, it was a perfect system. You know why? I can make a baby and not have to take care of him. So for the black man, all the babies he wanted, and give him to massa. And massa say take care of him. Now, let's fast forward to the day. One of the biggest gripes with people giving a man something, taking care of his children for him, it's like still propagating that slavery issue, that massa taking care of his children. I made 20 kids, guess what? I don't take care of any of them, right? Who's taking care of them? Master Tom is. I ain't doing it, right? So it's a slave mentality. These guys are still in that slavery mode, thinking that Master Tom's still responsible for taking care of my kids.
So Master Tom is now the government.
The Master Tom, you know, yeah, in a sense, a lot of women are feeding into it as well. Well, somebody got to take care of these babies I got, but it's, once again, it comes down to black men. I think black men. They're the ones, number one, somewhere down the line, somebody did not defend his family enough to keep them from children being carried off in slavery. What happens to black men who can't defend their families? This is in Africa, 320 years ago. Somebody made some decision when they could not defend themselves. They didn't have enough applied science to create weapons so that they can compete with the Europeans. Somewhere, even now in Africa, we started with, you know, we created the sciences and the alchemy and the astrology and the sciences. What happened? Okay, something happened that transpired that we could not defend our families enough that they can carve children off as slaves. So, we're here, and somehow we made perfect slaves. For 300 years, we made perfectly good slaves. Now you're saying, you guys is free. What mean we free? What mean, boss? We free. What does that mean? I mean, I don't work for you no more? What am I going to do? And so that's the slave mentality we have now in our cities. Or in the cities right now, you got guys who maybe it's been bred that way, bred to be a slave, that now you're free, and what am I going to do? All I know to be is a slave. Nobody's going to tell me what to do, what time to get up in the morning, what to do next day, right? How do I find a job? Somebody got to give me a job. It doesn't work that way. So it's not about slavery, it's about our mentality. You only keep a man a slave if he wants to be a slave. And I think today it still permeates because we, in a way, most of our people still want, they enjoy the fact they don't have men. And it's all about black men. We still don't want to have that responsibility.
I think it starts from actually when you're, it depends on a lot of things. Environment, who your role models are as far as who your parents are, if your parents are even still around, if mother, father, whatever. It depends on a whole lot of that because as a child, when you go to school, you don't learn about what we've done with our lives as far as black people. At elementary school, you learn you were slaves, and then there was Martin Luther King. So you don't have anything to really go on to unless you have strong people in your life at that point that can tell you for yourself, that can show you what you can become. And I think that's where the mentality starts. If you don't, it all starts with family, and it's always been with family. That's the reason why we haven't been able to grow. Like you said before about how in the beginning where they were just tearing families apart in slavery. And that's where the slave mentality comes from. And now that we're out of slavery, it has been fixed to a degree, but there's always been something to influence and break apart the homes, which is some of it is part of our own, and some of it isn't. Crack epidemic, not our fault. Crack was brought to us.
Yeah, but you don't have to smoke it. I don't
Yes.
get it.
Okay. I don't know. I've got a defense for that. Now, this may be controversial, but I understand it was just a bunch of young dudes trying to make money and have a good time. They had no idea what they were getting into with crack, because people can smoke weed and lead functional lives throughout the rest of their whole life. They had no idea. That first batch of crackheads did not know what was coming. Now, if you started smoking crack after like 92, 93, yeah, too bad. You're an idiot. You deserve what you get. But if you got caught up in the beginning of that is almost, I'm not going to say it's understandable to like, well, I'll say it's understandable that they didn't know what they were getting into. And they caught it at the ground floor, and that from that generation on, because ever since we were set free as slaves, from that point on, we had moved up consistently through the 60s, 70s, and then the 80s hit, and crack hit, and it just didn't hit, it hit all the ghettos, everywhere. It was like a crack bomb exploded, and it destroyed that whole generation. So then we had to build from there, and by then families were destroyed and everything else, and that's where the slave mentality was reintroduced, because every generation before that was moving up, but something had happened. And that's what happened, drugs. Now you're right, nobody had to go and put a gun to your head and say, hey, smoke this. But it was just young dudes that were trying to get money for one, that were in bad situations, and people who were smoking it had no idea. They had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. Like I said, the first batch of crackheads, they get a pass. I get it. You were young, you were partying, you didn't know. Anyone else after that, kick rocks. You deserve to go to jail or whatever else, because just on the grounds of being stupid. Just on the grounds of being stupid, because you've seen crackheads before and you know what crack does. For you to make a conscious decision to smoke crack after that, then you have just decided to be a loser.
I talk about this a lot. This is a very complex question and idea, because I most definitely think that the slavery from back then just transpired from physical slavery to mental slavery. We have that mentality. And to address what you were saying, if you want to be a slave, what was that comment? Can you say that again?
You said you can't make a man a slave unless he's inclined to be a slave.
Back then, a lot of the slaves, they revolted and they died because of it. So it came down to the point of, do I want to live or do I want to be a slave? And the ones that actually submitted, it was their will to live, because a lot of them revolted and they died because of that. And today, you look at our culture, and we can identify a lot of the things back from slavery to now. Like we were saying, how the black man, he had to watch his family get pulled apart. He had to watch his wife get raped. He had to watch his children get just treated any old kind of way, and he couldn't do anything. And to see that over and over again, that's very traumatic and traumatizing. So it still goes on today. Like the black man, a lot of times he's not in the house of the family. He's not in their lives, because back then they were stripped away. Because in Africa, the man was the head. He ran that whole household, and they respected him. Now, also, there's other ideas of where we've gotten from slavery to now, like women. We were used as sex slaves to the master. And you could kind of see that today, like we were talking in another debate, how black women, we are used as sex objects. And that's exactly how it was back in slavery. But now that we can identify the problem, we no longer have to use slavery as a crutch anymore. We don't have to say, oh, well, this happened to us back then and there. We can now say, this is what happened, this is how we're acting, and let's figure out how we could either reverse this or educate other African Americans so they can know why they're acting like this and change it. We don't have to use it as a crutch anymore. And that's where I disagree. A lot of people go, well, man, this ain't working out for me because slavery. Now we have to deal with the mentality of it, because we're no longer physically in bondage, but our brains are in bondage. Like, we need to be free. Now that we are free, it's a scary thing. When you've been in bondage to anything, to finally come out, you don't know what to do because you are so dependent. But once you find that independence, then you can soar. But I think we're at the point now that we realize we are embracing a lot of the things that happened to us in slavery, but now we should try to push forward and not use slavery as a crutch anymore.
I just want to make sure that when we talk about this slave mentality and everything, and how people are always saying that slavery happened 400 years ago and what does this have to do with today, I just want to make the point that, you know, a lot of the same things that happened in slavery, and that others have made the point, like the tearing apart of the black family, and how even today you look at the tearing apart of the black family and how the black man, most of them are in jail and the families are torn apart, and how we even have systems that promote basically the tearing apart of the family. Like in the welfare system, it's the women and the children, and I do understand why that is at times, but then it still kind of promotes that tearing of the family. And so you still see the same method that worked in slavery still persisting today. And I don't necessarily want to use slavery as an excuse for things, but it does need to be acknowledged in order for people to move on. And when a lot of times people want to disregard slavery and say that it doesn't have anything to do with anything today, and it does. It needs to be acknowledged. And when it's acknowledged, that's when you can move forward.
No.
And we're still playing a huge catch-up game,
Yeah.
even to this day. I mean, we've made leaps and bounds, compared to when, people first got out of slavery, but it's still a catch-up game as far as financial and everything else. You can get rich now, but, it's not old money. It's all new money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit of a catch-up game we're playing as far as a whole, as a people as a whole. But
And don't forget about the eugenics movement
yeah,
as well. It's still going, it's still alive and strong.
Planned Parenthood.
Oh, so when are you going to have this Republican, Democrat thing? But anyway, let me say this. I have a theory that when the slave net went out, and you caught some thug life in Africa 20 years ago. You caught some good people, and you caught some thug life. Okay?
Yeah, that's every mentality. The only difference is our thugs get thrown in jail.
But I'm talking about even in Africa.
Yeah.
And I'm a believer that your family, your great-great-great-granddaddy, whoever he was, shows who you are today. If your great-great-granddaddy was a thug life in Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, unless something changes, that lineage is going to fall down. You can be thug life today. All the African kings got rid of a lot of thug life.
Yeah.
Along with that came some decent people.
Yeah.
And what the reason being, because even in slavery, you have some free black men. Now tell me, how does a black man become free in the 18th century in America?
To be honest, I don't know. I didn't live back.
Well, it's interesting. I'm saying the same, but it happens every day. And if you read the accounts, these guys went out and worked, negotiated with his master, saying, "I have a skill, or I learned a skill. I'll make cabinets, and I would pay off my price of $500 for me and my wife. I'll do that in 5 years." Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what he did.
But I just want to point out, while there were black men who were able to do that in slavery, not everybody had that same type of master
Yeah.
and had that same opportunity to do that, even though they had the capacity to learn a skill, had the capacity to learn how to read and acquire it and to go out. And so the deeper, further south you got, the opportunities to do something like that were non-existent, because they killed anybody who even had potential to do something like that.
All those things, it all revolves around environment,
Yeah.
where you at and what you have to do to survive.
Slavery revolved around was money.
Exactly.
The master brought you for one reason, because he wants your labor, because he'll make money.
That's
Yeah.
Show me a way to make more money that you pay me by being a cabinet maker or a brick maker, whatever. And I can make you more money doing that than I can, growing tobacco and back 40.
Yes, and he'd make you be the brickmaker at his plantation and still keep you and not pay you or set you free.
Yeah, but you negotiate.
And then we're gonna cut because we have to go to the website at this time.
Sorry.
Let's hear what somebody in the web had to say. Guy on the couch.
Thank you. From round B on the second question, is there any validity to the theory that slavery continues to contribute to our mentality today? Yes, I believe that many of us are still stuck with a slave's mentality. And it is one of the main reasons why there is still self-hatred among black folks today. Many still hold beliefs that lighter is better than darker, and etc. We are also brainwashed by the media, who continue to post images of criminals being darker and lighter-skinned people being more responsible. Back to you.
All right, do we have a response to that?
I blame Kid and Play.
It's true, and the media plays a very great role in how they perceive black people, and then when media can reach a mass amount of people at a short amount of time, so they're continuously drilling in our minds that this complexion is safer as opposed to this one, and until they change, a lot of people are still going to feed into that media. So I think it's true.
And you have to look at power structure and the right part and the money too. And for people to stay in power and to keep things the way they are and keep the same people who are making the money in place and keep making the money, those types of ideologies of that saying light is better than dark and creating divisions among the people who could revolt and take that power out, they keep perpetuating these same ideas of light versus dark, and how not even light versus dark, and even mixed races, and trying to keep people from mixing races, because if you mix the races and race ceases to exist as a category, then they have to figure out another way to divide people and keep them separate. So I would just want to remind people, look at the power structures and who's in power and what they need to do to stay in power, and how do we challenge that.
All right. Go ahead.
It's just interesting. Like I said, everybody gives the white man far too much credit. I'm going to say it again, that we made good slaves. And to this very day, to separate us based on our skin color shows that we're so stupid.
I have to disagree strongly with that. I don't think that what they did in slavery, I do think, is very genius way of keeping people slaves and what they did. However, a lot of people don't we give the white man too much credit and we give the black man not enough credit. And I think that slavery is an extremely complex system that goes beyond just white and black. We often forget about the class structure that's in there as well, and how there's different segments of, poverty and you had poor white men and you had the rich elite slave owners. That specific power structure that did what they had to do, and they created divisions among race and making sure that even the poor white men would subscribe and come to them. They gave them a certain amount of rights, just enough to separate them from the black man, even though the poor white man had more in common with the black man. But it's just that those power structures, and they perpetuate those ideologies to keep that in play. And when people started saying, well, no, this is wrong, and there's not really that much of a difference, that's when things started to change.
Just real quick, she was saying, it was genius, like Jim Crow, like what he did to break down the mentality of the black man.
That was Willie Lynch.
Willie Lynch, I'm sorry. Yeah, Willie Lynch, excuse me. He broke down the mentality of the black man, and that's, when you break down the mentality, it's hard to build that back up. You can take someone's strength away, but they can get strong again and revolt. But when you break down their mentality, it's a whole nother level. Like, you have to do a lot more building, and you have to have a lot more encouragement. And what he did, and you still see it today.
That's not. Amazing thing you can learn from the European. You can learn from the European. Been in the military. You know how the European fights. He's not going to let anybody make him a slave. And he's willing to die at amazing rates. There's 1 million of his guys that keep his kids from becoming slaves. That's one thing I had to give him his props. Black men, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to do it now, to this very day? Yeah.
Well, that all comes from the first, I guess, run through slavery, the original run through slavery. They've mentally took everything. They took the biggest and strongest, ganged up on them, killed them, and was basically said, if we can kill this dude, then you all better stay in line because we can kill you. Then they
kill us. But I'm saying is that the Americans did that.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, at that risk of you trying to fight and revolt and go back, you're gonna lose all your wife and children and everything. So I understand what you're saying. Like, okay. Should we have did that? Probably, and some tried and some didn't, but they felt it better to live and keep the generations going than die.
We're going to go ahead and plug in the website right now. Please go to the section that says our book of the month. One of the ones we're featuring is called Principles of Politics and Government. If you ever want to know more about the government and how the country is ran, please look at that book. Also, I want to give a shout out to Huge Eagle Artwear, which is a jewelry line that does fabulous jewelry. It's anything you want. If you want to get an earring that says Black Advancement, go ahead and get it. She customizes. She's out of South Carolina, and it's at a reasonable price. Please check her out at Huge Eagle Artwear as well. We're going to take a quick break and come back with our third question.